welcome into another off-season, edition of Off the Leash. I'm Ashley Holder. That's Leah Doherty, Mark Schwab, and OBR's Fred Greetham. Guys, we've already completed the season, but now we are looking for a head coach. The Cleveland Browns firing former head coach Kevin Stefanski, and now the search is on. We've heard from Andrew Berry. We've heard from the Haslams, and listen, they need a head coach, and they need to find him now. The Browns have been able to interview about 6 people so far. What are we thinking from some of the people that they've been able to interview? We know Mike McDaniel has went in. Todd Monken has went in. Aiden Doherty has been interviewed. Dan Pitcher. Just a lot of names out there, and, of course, there's going to be a lot more to come.
This has gone exactly as I thought it would. Bunch of guys in. A lot of them fans have not heard of. Doesn't mean they're bad candidates. We've heard them attached to some names. But the only thing that surprised me a little bit was I was surprised Monken wanted to interview here because he was here for a year and had a bad experience. Correct me if I'm wrong, Fred, but after he left, didn't he say, like, he implied it was dysfunctional as heck? Said something like Freddie Kitchens.
He didn't call
He was
plays,
under Freddie
right?
Kitchens. He didn't ignore the game plan. Other than that, with Monken, nothing has surprised me so far with this.
Yeah, under Kitchens, I mean, I think they would say enough said, because it was that year. It was kind of all about. But I don't really remember, we talk to Monken every week, don't really remember anything that stood out. But that was, a strange year, with Freddie Kitchens. Said a lot of good things, but it was some strange, on the field, and led to the ouster, of him and John Dorsey, and ushered in Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry era. So, yeah, they've interviewed 3 offensive coordinators, 2 former head coaches, and 1 defensive coordinator. So I think they're kind of doing a puzzle. They're trying to say, if we got Schwartz as the head coach, who could we get as offensive coordinator? And if we got a head coach, would Schwartz stay as the defensive coordinator? And they're trying to and if they get turned down, to see what options they have. I think it's a piece of a puzzle.
That's what's really interesting, too, is the reports that have been coming out that they want to keep Jim Schwartz. Obviously, why would you not? But then what head coach is that going to fit with? Or he also interviewed for the Ravens gig. I don't know what kind of shot he has for that, but I think that kind of surprised people. I mean, it surprised me that he got the interview for that job. And so it's going to be interesting to see. Is that Mike McDaniel's interview? Is that today or was that yesterday? Am I wrong?
Yesterday.
That was yesterday. So Ashley would have a lot of thoughts on that too, right? As a Miami girl, that would be crazy if he came here. There's so many interesting ways this could go, this entire NFL landscape right now.
I think the fun thing about McDaniel would just be that he's goofy.
I just good sound bites.
Yes, good sound bites. I think for TV, right? I'm not thinking about how well the team would do. I'm just thinking of how fun it would be.
Entertainment.
Yeah, we put this story together actually yesterday. I think Mark, you ran it in the 10 o'clock news, and it was just all the funny sound bites. Shout out to our producer Chris, because he found these amazing sound bites of just the crazy things that McDaniel was saying. I'm just like, man, this is kind of cool. Like, I would love McDaniel to be.
He obviously was here before.
Football, just totally just about as a wide receivers coach back in the day a little bit
He was
ago.
here in 14 under Kyle Shanahan, and they had a pretty good thing going. If you remember the famous Shanahan won it out and put a 32-point PowerPoint and came out. McDaniel put that together and went with him to San Francisco, or he went to Atlanta, but he ended up in San Francisco when Shanahan got. So, who knows? Stranger things have happened. So
I do remember Mike Pettin saying, I don't need to see 32 pages on why you don't want to be here. If you don't want to be here, get out. And he basically just released him from the contract.
That's amazing.
Interesting.
That he even put 32
Pettin
pages
retired
together.
today.
Yes, he did. Mike Pettin retired, former Browns head coach.
Yeah, one thing to circle back around what Leah and Fred were talking about was just how much I think the team really does want Jim Schwartz to stay here. But I'm also like, if you really want Jim Schwartz to stay here, then I think you should make him the head coach. If you feel he's that good of a coach, and honestly, all the guys have said nothing but positive things about Jim Schwartz. I'm not saying he's the best coach in the world, but it is clear that he does have that locker room. I think that's very clear.
They have to thread a needle to keep him. To keep him, they have to hire an offensive coach. They have to hire an offensive coach that agrees to keep Jim on staff, which is probably going to be the easiest part of this. They also have to have another team not want to hire Jim, either as a head coach, or maybe some other team offers him defensive coordinator, associate head coach, and he has to not want to take that, or assistant head coach. They put a free. That is some fine pie slicing. It might work out for them, but there's a lot that has to go their way.
I just feel like if the Browns hired him as head coach, I don't really feel like anything changes. So you hire him as head coach, Tommy Rees stays on as OC, and then what changes?
Don't assume that Rees stays on.
But if they do, like, what changes? I don't feel
Nothing.
and so I'm like, I guess they hire him. So what? They're gonna fire Tommy Rees?
You can hire Schwartz and then fire.
But I'm saying,
Rees.
like, in your opinion, you think that's going to happen regardless of whoever comes in?
Otherwise, to your point, what did they change?
No,
but also
nothing.
But
Tommy Rees could be being looked at for also college positions as well, which we've heard a couple of his name thrown around for a couple college teams for head coaching positions.
I just think I don't know how he. I don't know. I don't want to throw it all on him, obviously, but I don't know how. If you have Jim Schwartz, you can't just keep Tommy Rees. Nothing
you
changes.
can't. Which then they would also look silly because they'd have to fire Rees and say, we don't think you're qualified to be an offensive coordinator, even though we just interviewed you to be our head coach.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a very sticky situation.
Yeah,
but I do think keeping Schwartz does bring credibility and respectability. You guys talked about how much he's respected in the locker room. He's respected around the league. I think he does, if you're talking to free agents, that league-wide respect can help. Not that there's a ton of guys out there that would necessarily, but they know he's not just some guy. He's somebody that has a lot of respect in the league. So I think there's an advantage there. But to bring him in, but I don't know if that's the real solve here that they need.
I have a different take. That I do think that he would do things different. I mean, he always deferred to Kevin Stefanski. He wouldn't, that's Kevin's call. I remember, and I'm not saying this is the great, but when Hugh Jackson was fired on Friday, whenever practice was, on Monday, Greg Williams took over. To me, it was night and day different. No music anymore. It was all business. And he took that same lousy roster and went 5-3, and that Hugh Jackson was 1-7. And I think Schwartz would do things different. I think he would bring accountability and discipline, that you're not going to clown around, and get away with some of the things, because we would listen to Kevin every week go, well, they got to do better. Jerry Jeudy dropped the ball every game and go, I trust him. Well, bench him. Maybe, I don't know. But I think Schwartz would do some of that. And I think that's what they're trying to thread the needle. Would McDaniel, if he didn't get a head coach, would he be offensive coordinator with Schwartz? We don't know who could bring in guys there.
He's the guy you want leading your team, and you want to build your team's culture around. I think that's the guy that Jim Schwartz is. And to your point, you hit the nail on the head. Accountability. I think offensively, I was saying I didn't feel like much maybe would change with the team if you're just elevating Jim Schwartz. But in terms of inside that building, holding guys accountable, which was something maybe when we were reading into some players talking, maybe that was something they didn't get as much of from Kevin Stefanski. You bet your butt you're going to get that from Jim Schwartz, too. And even just hearing him in press conferences, how colorful he can be. I mean, people ask him 3 questions, and he'll go 12 minutes or something in his press conference.
And he shuts down the reporters if he doesn't want to go there. Kevin always just kind of,
I understand the question.
Yeah. With what Kevin says.
Well, we did hear from General Manager Andrew Berry on his thoughts on what this team is going to need in this new coach.
Really, our focus is on identifying and finding, the leader and the partner to bring along this young team, as well as the young players that we're going to add in the next several months. So that work is going to be deliberate. It's going to be immediate. It's more, you're looking for maybe a specific skill set given where we are in our build. I think that's fair. I don't think that archetype is singular. I don't think that means it just has to be a young person. I don't think that just means it has to be an offensive coach. I mentioned a little bit earlier, the head coaching position is so different than being a coordinator, and the head coach's responsibility is to make sure that the offense is run and developed well, as opposed to necessarily having to be the person that directly does it. In any head coach opening, every organization has their own challenges, their own constraints. There may be at different points with their roster's lifestyle. We'll be looking for something different than maybe some of the other openings have, based on where they are as a team. And some good coaches will fit us, but they won't fit the Titans. Some will fit the Giants, and they won't necessarily fit us. But we're looking for the right leader and the right partner for our present situation. And I have a lot of confidence that we'll be able to find that person.
So that's a good way to kickstart this next conversation. Do you feel like the Browns are specifically going to look for an offensive head coach? I know they haven't just interviewed offensive guys, but do you think when they make the hire, is it going to be a coach with an offensive background?
I think that they have to get a coach with an offensive mindset because the offense is the biggest problem on this team. And, I mean, you don't even have to go into everything that has happened in this season. They need to figure out how they are going to take this offense to the next level. And that starts with, obviously, which Barry was talking a lot about, finding who that quarterback is. Who are they going to build this whole thing around, and not for next year and only next year, but after that. They got to find their guy. And he made that promise to, the fans and whatnot, saying that we are going to find that guy, and that's who's going to be there. And they're looking at external veteran options. They're looking at the draft, and they're looking in-house as well. And my assumption will be that it's most likely Shador, but you got to have someone that's going to be ready to take this offense to the next level, right? We can't be dealing with Jerry Jeudy drops all year. I got to get it in
I
there
think for
somehow.
any defensive coordinator, they've got a little bit of an uphill climb in today's NFL, but it's not impossible. I know as much as obviously the rules have slanted to favor offenses, so everybody loves that, and of course it sells tickets and gets people excited. But as much as it's offensive driven, if you have a defensive minded head coach and you bring in an offensive coordinator, let's say he is the next hot shot, and you get the quarterback and everything clicks and is humming, and then he's hired as a new head coach. You got to bring in, unless you just promote somebody on staff, which sometimes can happen, sometimes can't. You got to bring in a whole new OC. It's a whole new offense. You're into that, process again of your quarterback, learning all the terminology and learning the ins and outs of the playbook and everything. It just seems like it's a harder thing to keep resetting. You either have a bad offensive coordinator that nobody wants, or you get the next hot name, and you got to keep replacing him, which changes your offense over and over. So I do think it's sometimes advantageous to just hire a really good offensive guy. And true, you can lose your defensive coordinator, and then you got to learn that system. It just doesn't seem to impact the club as much. I'm not saying don't hire a defensive guy. They went out of their way to interview the dude from Seattle, Doherty. Nobody had heard of him. That wasn't like checking a box. Nobody knows anything about that guy. I don't know why they did that. So they must not be thinking, hey, we are only going to look offense if there's some of these guys that kind of went out of their way to talk to.
Could be the first Brit. He's from England, And,
yeah, you're right.
And, that close to being a head coach. So, yeah, it's I do think that they're trying to put it together. And when Andrew Barry was talking, we might not be just look. That's what the John Harbaugh obviously came about after the press conference. I think nobody saw that could throw a monkey wrench in it. We don't know if Jimmy Haslam's going to move mountains to get him. And, does that mean them changing?
Yeah, we'll actually talk a little bit about John Harbaugh and Mike Tomlin coming up a little bit later in the show. Those are some definitely breaking news. But we're going to take a really quick break. We will be back with our true-false question of the week.
All right, true false question of the week. Yes, we still do them, even though it's the off season. We have things to talk about. True false question. And I guess I got to parse this a little bit with some nuance. But bottom line, the Cleveland Browns fans will be unimpressed by the team's hire. And by that I mean there's kind of like name brand hiring, right? Harbaugh is a name brand. McDaniel is a name brand to an extent. Jim Schwartz is a name brand. The kid from Jacksonville is not. Shieldhouse from the Rams is not. And fans, they hear the next no name, they don't care. So true or false, Browns fans will be uninspired by the next hire.
Can I ask a question before we get into it? Were people uninspired by the Kevin Stefanski hire because he had not been a head coach?
Mostly. Right?
That was,
yeah.
There wasn't a resounding sense of excitement when he got hired? Okay. That factors into my decision.
Yeah, I was going to say. I would probably say, yeah, probably not. Because I don't know if they'll go with – I feel like they will be happy if they go with Schwartz, but if they don't, they won't be impressed.
They're not going to land a Harbaugh.
They get someone like Deion Sanders in the building.
You just said, right, there was some Harbaugh update. I don't think they're landing Harbaugh.
I'll throw this into it because it does impact
we're going to talk also
okay.
about –
go ahead.
We're going to talk about Harbaugh
But this
Tomlin
matters with the
true
false. It seems like he's out, right?
It sounds like the Browns are not one of the front runners.
That matters into the true false.
We'll get into more of the details later. But
that matters into the true false. So really, would they be excited by McDaniel, Schwartz? This is so hard. I feel like they could land. I'm going to go positive and say true. I think they'll be excited.
You think they'll be excited?
Fans, right? That was the question.
Yes. The question was,
I say yes.
True or false, fans will be uninspired.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
I was going to say that
false.
I answered mine wrong.
Got it.
You know what's
There you
interesting
go.
that I don't
So
know how
maybe I gotta come up with a better
we've
segment.
had at least 20
It's too
episodes,
confusing,
and
Mark.
we still can't get the true false.
You know what I
question
do?
right.
I just
It
got to
is
call
an
it the
issue.
question of the day. That's just got to be.
Yeah, I just, guys, we're gonna have to switch this from true
but
false.
I like true false because it's like definitive. You have
We
to.
are never definitive.
I know, but like I like that you have to pick a side and you have to make a choice, and there's no gray area. So, Mark, ask the question again.
True or false? Browns fans will be uninspired by the
False.
False.
That's
Brett?
my decision.
Yeah, that's why, being a diplomat, always kind of both sides of it. True, they were not going to be inspired. If it's Jim Schwartz, like, If it's Tommy Rees, Whoever it is going to be, And so I don't think they're going to be inspired. Like, to go back to the Stefanski. It's like Saleh or Stefanski. Nobody really knew either other than you saw a dominant defense go, I'd rather have Saleh. He goes to the Jets.
And stinks. And it didn't work out there.
So it's like, what matters?
Yeah, I think it'll be, to answer my own question, I do believe Browns fans will be uninspired. But I think most of a lot of the great coaches, when they're hired, nobody knows who they are. Mm-hmm. A lot of the recycled ones don't always work out on the second trip. John Gruden, that's enough. You hire John Gruden, Browns fans are going to go crazy. Doesn't mean they're winning a Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. But if you find the next McVay, whether it's Shieldhouse or the kid in what's the kid's name in Jacksonville? Udini?
Who's 29?
Udinsky.
Is that the kid who's
Grant-
29 going on 30.
Grant
Maybe he's that
Udinsky.
next guy.
That's crazy.
I don't know. I'm not saying I want them to hire him. I'm just saying the next hot thing is never the guy you think it is.
Oh, 100%. I'm just waiting for why isn't Cliff Kingsbury beginning an interview yet? He was interviewed by the Ravens. That, to me, would be inspiring.
Lady Wreckham over here.
Yeah, exactly. I'd be
We
inspired.
know why she wants me. All right, we're going to take a really quick break, and we'll be right back on Off the Leash. All right, some devastating news that came out today. Mike Tomlin is no longer.
Oh my gosh, you make it sound like he passed away, Ashley.
It's really hard for me to get these words out. You know what I mean? Mike Tomlin, the era in the 4-1-2 in the Pittsburgh is done. He's out as head coach. Sounds like he came into the Rooney's office, said, look, I'm ready to step down. That's what they say. 19 seasons in Pittsburgh. John Harbaugh, which we talked a little bit about, has been with the Baltimore Ravens since 2008. I think Tomlin was with the Steelers in 2007. He is now out as well. You said that they got the update that, the Browns are probably out of the conversation with that. Now people are throwing Mike Tomlin's name in the conversation with the Browns. Is there a possibility that he could come here? I think that's absolutely not going to happen.
Yeah.
But these are still two big losses for two big organizations, the two longest tenure coaches in the NFL. Now it's Andy Reid. I mean, so do the Browns have a chance at even, getting even a preliminary call with Mike Tomlin?
I don't know why Tomlin would want to coach.
I thought it looked like people had thought early reports that he was maybe going to take a year off, maybe do TV, and maybe would.
Well, that would be
consider
interesting
that.
if he did TV.
Honestly, I'm surprised John Harbaugh wants right back in. The Harbaugh news, let me just get it out there so we have it. This is Deanna Rossini, NFL insider. She says right now she's told the Giants, Falcons, and Titans are considered the front runners to land Harbaugh. He apparently, according to Adam Schefter, he did have a call with the Browns. He was basically calling teams on the phone and having a conversation to see if he wanted to interview. All right, Giants, Falcons, Titans, what do they have that the Browns don't have? Young quarterbacks. Titans have like $100 million in cap space. It's the first thing most of us said. I'm sure you guys all thought of it when Harbaugh came free. Why would he come here? You've got these other options.
There's no plan at quarterback. And
Right.
there were reports, too. I mean, he was just watching film of Cam Ward and Jackson Dart. Those were like early things that were coming out. And everyone was like, well, what about Shador? Is he not watching tape of Shador?
Yeah. Well, and even at the Ole Miss game, Jackson Dart was on the sideline, and they got him, mouthing. They said, who's going to be the next coach? And he said, I don't know, Stefanski, Harbaugh, already. So I feel like, they are obviously talking to him and saying, who do you think is going to be the best? Because I think he is going to obviously factor in that decision. And going back to what we were talking about, even with Schwartz, I also feel like Myles Garrett could, factor in that decision of, where the Browns also go with Schwartz, because I do think Myles is a big part of this operation, unless we know something that he knows something we don't, and he's out of here in a couple years
So
or something like that.
Here's the thing for me with Schwartz. Obviously, this would be a second go around. He doesn't. I don't think, unless he just really wants to take a head coaching job. I think they would have to sell him on here's our legitimate plan for quarterback, because the way they sold Myles Garrett was here's $40 million a year. You're not really going to sway Jim Schwartz on that. You can't really give him the ridiculous contract to be your head coach. Why would you? He's not the caliber of coach that Garrett is of a player. So for them to get Schwartz, they're going to have to say, okay, here's what we can do, and he's going to have to buy that. You know what I mean? He's considered a pretty good candidate. If you want him to be the head coach, you want him to hang his hat on this thing, you got to show that guy why you can actually get a competent quarterback in here. I don't know why you take the job otherwise.
I mean, well, I guess in theory, any coach you're interviewing, you have to sit down and say, here's our plan at quarterback. And I'm not sure what that is.
I think he has more leverage than the
youngsters. 100%.
Yeah, but unless he gets to say, this is what I think we should do at quarterback, and do you follow, are you going to follow my lead and say, that this is what I think is the best thing, whether that's Shador or whatever else it is. But the thing is, are they going to trust in him? Because, it was like Barry said that him and Stefanski were so super close. I'm not saying that they're not, but is Barry looking for someone to be just as close with him to make those decisions? Is Barry also making the decisions with the head coach? I never really could understand who was making those decisions, because it did look very weird when Flacco gets traded, and then he's like, I didn't know about it. I still think that that's weird to this day.
It's very weird.
Yeah, and that's, I'm sure, was a big part of the discussion, with Jim Schwartz, what's the plan and what would we do and so forth there. As far as the locker room, you felt like a lot of them spoke up for Stefanski, but I'd say even more spoke up for Schwartz. So if there's any, being there, that would take that. But the quarterback all the way around, if you're Harbaugh, you had Lamar Jackson. Most of these jobs that have a quarterback, why did Mike Vrabel go to New England? He saw you saw Ben Johnson go to the Bears because so the Browns have the defense, but you don't have that sure shot quarterback, and it doesn't look like you're going to be able to draft one. So whether you get some in, veteran or in a trade, that's the age old. Tomlin is still under control, as I understand, of the Steelers. It's not like he was fired or anything. And he can step away, and he could come back in a year. But he might want to come over and be on off the leash. I figured that's, I think you're going to see him on TV. Look at the Bill Cowher. He steps away, never went back to coaching. It's a pretty good gig. Show up on Sunday, give your little input, gets quite a bit of money. And I could see Tomlin doing that. And if he gets the bug, maybe go back to coaching. But what else does he need to do?
I would love to see Tomlin on TV, just because Bill Cowher is one thing, but Tomlin is so funny because he's also very tight with it. We do not care. I do not care. Like, I would love to see him on TV just to see how his personality is, being a journalist and a TV personality.
But I think that's what was interesting too, is like seeing Saban and how Saban has transitioned.
I didn't think he was going to transition well.
Yeah, which everyone was like, how is that going to go? And seeing him with like a Pat McAfee type personality or whatever. So Tomlin would be interesting too.
I think Tomlin would be so fun on TV because the guy has seen a lot, and he comes off during the press conferences, right, as such kind of a I can't say the word.
What are you going to say?
Straight shooter, hard,
but right.
He called Andrew Berry out, during the season. Yeah. Nobody does that.
But if he's going to go on to television, he's got to drop the veil a little bit. And he's one of those guys like Saban. He's one of those guys. If you want to, drop the curtain a little bit, I kind of want to hear what that guy has to say.
Yeah.
And I think they will have people work with these guys. You know what I mean? I don't think Saban just stepped into TV and no one worked with him. They put him probably with some type of console person and was like, listen, we're going to work on what you look like in TV. It's not the same way as coaching and stuff like that. So I definitely could see it. But I just assumed, like in my mind, that he would just go somewhere else. Like, coaching is not done for him. I could see Tomlin still coaching for like another 5 years. Like, I could see him getting to 25 years easily. Where, I don't know. But I also don't think he wants to go somewhere. If he does go somewhere, that he's just there for a year.
Yeah.
I think Tomlin is a longevity coach.
And just like the thought of like, why would you want to go and have to go through a rebuild or whatever. Like, you want to be able to go to a team where you can have like instant success too. I feel like in that point in my career, I wouldn't want to come here and be like, let's see what we can do and try to develop an offense wherever. You want to go somewhere where you're going to have success, and maybe he just wants
players
to
love playing for him. Like, from what my understanding, long time Dustin Fox, who was on Cleveland Airwaves for a while and former Ohio State Buckeye, played in the league. And Dustin, you know, he's from Northeast Ohio, so he's not a big fan of the Steelers. But I remember he was always talking about he played under Tomlin in Minnesota. I think he was either the DC or his position coach, one of the two. And he said, I love that guy. I would play for that guy anywhere. That's like my ride or die type of coach. And he is not the only one that feels that way about Mike Tomlin. Now, you know, of course, there's going to be some guys along the way that don't like him, but most players love playing for that dude. So if Mike Tomlin went over to take over like a veteran team,
That's the thing.
I don't think he's going to have a problem getting the respect of those players, and they're going to want to play for that guy. Whereas if it's a veteran team that maybe hires the up-and-coming coach, you never always know how that's going to work out.
And that's probably why it's important to keep Jim Schwartz here, too, is if they do come bring in some coordinator or someone make a hire that no one really knows who they are, to be able to keep the locker room and have someone like Schwartz, that would be huge.
Well, he's going to be attractive to Kevin Stefanski, you know, wherever he lands, to take him with him. So that's what
another layer.
You're trying to, you know, figure out how bad do you want to keep him.
I hope he takes Ventrone with him.
Yep. I was actually I was waiting to see if they, you know, retained him somehow.
They're all
I guess
under
you wait
contract.
to the head
Yeah.
coach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I could see, you know, the Giants waiting to see what someone like Harbaugh wants to do, and then like is Stefanski. I've heard Stefanski's name be thrown around a bunch when it comes to
Interviewed
the
with 5 teams.
Yeah.
For the head coach.
And someone, you know, what's funny is someone retweeted this on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it these days, and someone said, "What is so attractive about this guy?" Like, a lot of people were just like, "Why are they still even looking at Stefanski?" But I mean, again, that's what it is. Like, someone gets fired and they still manage to stay around.
In the circuit.
And I really like Brian Flores too. Like, I think that he would be an
I'm
awesome
surprised
coach to come
he's
here as well.
not picked up another job. He's another guy that he's one of those dudes that players seem to really respect and like playing for. He's right now, as of Tuesday afternoon, he's the odds-on favorite for the Pittsburgh job. I think he was getting 3-1 odds. And yes, there are odds makers for this type of thing.
Right ahead of Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame.
Yeah, that surprised me a little bit because he does not. Does he have NFL experience? I forgot about.
No.
A lot of times, guys from the college to the NFL, if they don't have NFL experience, boy, it's hard for them to pan out.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll see.
Yeah. Well, Andrew Berry said that the next 120 days are going to be the most important, and, you know, to have success for this team, it starts with finding a head coach, and then from there they got to go to a quarterback. We will probably see a million names be thrown out over the next couple of weeks, and I know was it you that were saying that you think that a decision would come like the end of the month or
I think
February?
the Browns, you know what, I was going to make this point, and you just kind of teed me up with it. I think the Browns are going to have to wait a while. They're going to have to wait for some of the better opportunities to hire. They got to get, you know, Harbaugh. Now it sounds like they're out of that, but they needed some of these guys to make a decision. If they wanted to chase whoever, they might have to wait on this one candidate they're waiting on, and maybe he picks somewhere else. So they had to wait for that situation to resolve. But then they maybe have to wait for the Giants or Titans to fill their opening because somebody else they're interested wants to see if they're going to get that. And does that mean the Browns are kind of left with what's left over? Yeah, but they're not a real attractive situation right now. So I don't think we're going to get a hire in the next week or two. You never know. Stranger things have happened, but I just think we're going to be waiting around for a while.
And I just don't see how that works in their favor, though. You getting the
I don't
leftovers.
know if it's in their favor, but I don't know what other choice they have. I mean, the top candidates aren't looking at Cleveland. So what other choice do you have?
You don't have a choice.
Man, is this what you guys have gone through for 20
this
years?
is Dave.
Well,
I mean,
that's why I said from the beginning, Jim Schwartz, unless you are sure you don't want him, that's your best option. Because if you go out and you go, hey, John Harbaugh, I go, oh, okay. And you end up, no disrespect, with Mike Pettin, Rob Chudzinski, guys that have never been a head coach, and they're just desperate to take the job. I know they were 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th on their list, and that's what you get. You have to have that kind of as best as you can, and I have to think before they made the move with Stefanski, they had a pretty good idea what they were going to do. If they just went into this hoping, then I think that is not a good plan.
Well, again, there's going to be a lot of names going out there. We don't know when the Browns are going to make a final decision, but of course, when they do, we will make sure we bring it to you. Of course, you'll already see it on Facebook, Twitter, and everything else, but don't worry, this is not the last episode of Off the Leash. We will be here every week breaking down something new, everything what the Browns are doing, whether that's coaching changes, new signings, as well as the draft and all that good stuff. So make sure you stay locked into Cleveland19.com. We'll have all of that for you. We are going to wrap things up for Ashley Holder, Leah Doherty, OBR's Fred Greetham, and Mark Schwab. This is Off the Leash.